orientation. You can change your speaker view. You just got an affirmation that you'll be recorded there on your screen. In the upper right, you can change from gallery view to speaker view. The gallery, when they're not sharing slides, is a great way for all of us to feel connected. Down in the lower right, lower left, you can stop your video, you can mute. The chat is an active window down in the bottom where you can throw questions in. We'll try to keep that as sort of a meta channel for what we're doing here. What else am I missing? When we go into breakouts, you can join. It's pretty obvious. You can come back anytime. But actually, we're going to stay in the main room, except for those that go off to Tim. So it should be pretty clear. I think that's it. Why don't you flip the slide, give a picture of Katy there. And Katy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm excited to be here. It's been really fun working on this project and getting support from the community here. So I work as an independent consultant, primarily in the social sector, with a focus on systems change, collaboration, multi-stakeholder collaboration. And this project, I'll share a little bit more with you, but it was a project for a philanthropic foundation called the Water Foundation, which is based here in California and works across the American West.
Cool. So we're going to jump into small groups right now. This is a chance to continue to build relationships with folks here. Unless you had another question, Christine, I was just thinking folks could talk about places or communities that they can see that they would love to have a mapping view of, a visualization of those communities from a relationship perspective. So think about that for a sec. We'll be 2 minutes each way. We're going to be in groups of 3. I think we can do that.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Did you want to chat out that question at all, Jim? That might be helpful
Sure.
for people to see in the chat
I'll
box.
put it in the chat, and you'll have to self-time. It goes by fast, so 2 minutes each.
And it's also, it's also an introduction. So do introduce yourselves as you jump into areas you'd like to see mapping happen.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah.
I didn't go to
It's okay that you did not join your group. Nope, you're okay. There's somebody else in there.
Okay.
You're good.
Good.
All right. Oh. Perfect. David Takashi. Do you know David?
He's come several times, Takahashi, and he has spent a lot of time in technical sessions with Tim. So I've hardly interacted with him at all, but I think Tim has a better sense of what he's trying to do. And oh, this guy, Lou. Yeah.
Hey, Lucas.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
I'm gonna move you to your breakout room if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm having like weird technical issues going on my computer.
Okay. Did you? Because I was wondering if he actually abandoned them because he didn't want to be in a breakout room.
No, yeah, it's like shifting me around for some reason. It's like one of my first times using Zoom, so maybe I'm doing something weird on my part.
Okay. I just sent you an invite. Did you get a notice to join a one?
I did not just get one.
I don't know what to do here. I tried moving you twice now.
Huh. Well, he can stay with us. Are you timing, Sarah?
Yeah, there's like another minute left. Oh, no, he went into his room. Okay.
Okay. A
I just
minute
tried
left.
moving Jim into one too. Oh gosh, this is not working out well. I didn't want to leave that guy by himself, so I felt bad.
Did you put him by himself?
Well, his partner was by himself, and then he wasn't able to join, so I moved his partner, so now he is by himself.
Hmm. I see.
Sorry, Lucas.
They'll survive.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him the 1 minute anyways right now.
So, but if they're supposed to, has it been 6 minutes already?
I thought it was only 2 minutes.
2 minutes per person, but if there's 3 people.
Oh shit! How do I stop this now?
Did you?
I hit the closed breakout room, so they got the 1 minute freaking warning.
Okay. That's okay. I'll just say a little blurb about how we're learning and
About how sorry I am that I gave him only 2 minutes instead of 6.
and then we can go into Katie's. I see why you wanted to avoid this thing.
And I can't get it to stop either. I think. And everybody's back.
Okay. Not everybody yet, but where's everybody back? So,
That was fast.
So Sarah accidentally hit the bring them back in a minute button and couldn't unhit the bring them back in a minute button. And so I'll just say there's parts of this process that we're all still learning, and it's emerging and developing, and the facility, and frankly, the introductions piece is the hardest part. We are always sort of in tension about how to do introductions, because there's no perfect solution to doing that without spending a lot of time at it. So
I don't know, 3 of us got through our introductions. You know, you never know what's going to happen. So we were just like.
Anyway, Sarah was feeling bad. I'm speaking for her, of course, which she could speak for herself, but. So
I think we can. I think we'll take that as time that we can use as a buffer, and the other places we're going to lose time on this. So, yeah, and I think we can make up for it by just being very generative in your interactions and stuff. I think in terms of ground rules, it's right. Stay present, take space, but make space, and stay focused on the topic, and try to have conversations that build on each other's conversations. All right, Katy, take it away.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just start by.
Actually,
Go ahead.
so is anybody have technical questions that they want to go off and work one-on-one with Tim? Because this would be the time to do that by raising your hand, I guess.
You can either raise your hand or put Tim's name in front of your name on your Hollywood Square so that we know so that Sarah knows to move you to be with Tim. And it looks like everybody wants to see Katie's map. Is anybody?
Tim, do you have feelings about this?
No, I'm happy. I wanted to see it. So.
All right.
Good. Yeah.
We're all in.
Yeah,
Great, good. Well, I'll kick it off just with a few minutes of context and introduction before sharing the map. So this was a map that was put together pretty recently, just started about a year ago. It was about a 3-month process of people uploading their information, and it's kind of been continuing to live and have its own life. As I mentioned earlier, it was a foundation that was a project that was initiated by the Water Foundation, which is a philanthropic foundation that has a program on urban resilience that's focused in the Los Angeles area. And they came in with some questions they were holding about the field, and some hypotheses about siloization that was happening in the field. And they were interested in having more information. And as we walked into it, it was also clear this would be a great opportunity to create a network map that would serve the field as well. And so we really built it to be something that's of service to the broader field. So, it was really something that we put together not as a network map of an existing formal network, but more of a field map. So it was open source and invitational. So everybody who identified by a set of criteria that we created and put out was welcome to join the map. So we ended up with about 150 people who filled in their profile information through sumApp. And we have even a bigger list of people who were brought into the map through the connections that were made. So, doing the map in this way really required a lot of strong outreach and a different design than mapping a network, which I'd love to do because after doing this, it would feel so straightforward, to not have to be doing a lot of that outreach. And I'll just say too that this map was part of a bigger design process design that included, so it was very participatory. We had an advisory committee guiding the whole process. We did 20 field interviews across the system to inform the map structure and language, and to make the map really serve the field and what they were interested in knowing about each other. And then the project culminated in a convening of 20 leaders from across the field to do some sense making with the map, and also to lay the foundation for a collaborative network going forward. So that's just a little bit of background, and I'll go ahead and share the map. And I'm going to just share a few views with you. This is the main map here. I really felt like as we walked into this process, and I learned about sumApp from Sarah Shanahan here, who was super helpful. And Sarah actually came and spoke to our steering committee to talk about network mapping and how this map could be used. So that was super helpful. And then sumApp seemed to be the perfect tool because we really wanted to create something that was available to people in the network, and was kind of a bit of an added incentive for people to fill out their profiles and connection information. So we ended up with this map. There's, in the side pane, some information to help orient those participants to the map itself. It created a 2-minute orientation and then a longer video tutorial that have been uploaded, and then created 3 views that were available there, and also an invitation for other people to join the map here. So we created the map, and my understanding is that it is being used by folks out there to find each other. This is our main kind of attributes map, and so it includes a number of filters, and again, we wanted to make it easy for people to find each other, so they could find people working in their watershed. These are all the watersheds in LA County.
It's so cool.
And we could also have people find each other by political boundaries as well. So these are the main neighborhoods in the county. People could also find, who else is working on key issues related to water. And as you can see, there are a lot of categories here. And actually, it was great in this sense, but I feel like some of our questions had a lot of options, and, we limited the responses that people could make. But I feel like if we could go back and do it again, I wouldn't reduce the number of options here, but in some of the questions, I'd try and tighten that up a little bit. We also, in addition to water focus, we also did kind of cross-cutting issues, because a lot of people who work on water do it in connection with another issue like health or climate change or whatever. So we enable people to choose their areas of interest here as well. And then we also looked at who people are serving. So, you can look at who's on the maps, working with low-income communities or seniors or specific other communities. And then the last one is role. So where, you know, what people's role in the system is. It's been great. And down here we do have connection types, so we can filter by people actively working together or whatnot. So this was really great. And then one way that we used this in the convening was that I created a number of snapshots of these network constellations according to you know, specific roles and specific watersheds. So we could really start to get a sense of, you know, which watersheds had healthier network relationships than other watersheds. And so it really gave this interesting picture, you know, to do these snapshots of the map according to these different attributes and put them up beside each other. And we use that in our convening to try and make sense of what's happening across the landscape. We did that by watershed and also by role. So we found that, you know, for example, environmental leaders were really well networked together, whereas academics, people in education, were less so. And also if we went to local government, you know, that was also an interesting area that, you know, there were more kind of pockets of connections rather than a healthier kind of network structure. So that was an interesting picture, and I'll just walk you through a few more views here. So this is a snapshot of the kind of racial identity of the community. And this was, you know, an attribute that we kept private. It doesn't show up on people's profiles, but it was really the most powerful picture of the network that we used in the convening. It sparked some really powerful and deep discussions that I think probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. So you can kind of get a sense here that if you kind of drew a circle around the core, you see it's mostly Caucasian people in this teal color, and Hispanic or Latinx leaders in orange, with a few Asian American or Pacific Islander leaders in blue. And that's really pretty distinctive. So we have African American participants in yellow, and you can see that there are just a few of them, and they're very much around the periphery. And then a Native American, there's nobody showing up on that map that was identified as Native American. But I kind of took it a step further to map with bullseye multiracial individuals who include African American and multiracial individuals who include Native American. So that just gave a little bit more nuance here. And again, you know, these individuals are pretty much around the periphery. So we took this into the convening, and it was really, like I said, a powerful motivator. I feel like it really opened the door to some deeper dialogue, as well as some great potential actions that came out of it. And it was also really helpful to inform not just this map, but all of these different snapshots to inform who we brought into the convening, to have this conversation about sense making and about, you know, what potential is there in Los Angeles County to bring different actors together around resilience to, you know, and water, through the water lens, resilience to build a healthier future for everybody. We also mapped out collaboratives that already exist. So we really, the foundation and others had a sense that there's a lot happening around water already. And so in the interviews, we asked people what collaborative networks they knew about in the county that focused or touched on water. And there were over 20 of them, you can see here. And what was really interesting is that, you know, our hypothesis coming out of this is that you can see a lot of those really fly to the center. And so we sense that a lot of, you know, that a group of people were basically participating in a lot of these collaboratives. And that, you know, there are a few collaboratives around the outside that are bringing in participants that aren't part of these other networks. But this also gave rise to some great discussion. And the foundation's also using this map they're pulling together another convening of representatives from all these collaboratives, and that's going to be pretty interesting. But this, again, just gave rise to some great discussion. And lastly is this map, which we see a lot in these network maps of Skillshare. And so, you know, I have it filtered right now in fundraising. So we ask people, again, you know, if what skills they have that they're willing to share and, you know, with other people and advise other people, as well as skills people wanted to invite from the network. And so we map this out in a little bit of a different way in Kumu, with red circles indicating individuals who invite the skill, green are people who offer the skill, and purple are people who both invite and offer that skill. And again, we did, you know, kind of snapshots of these skills side by side, and it was really helpful to kind of get an audit of the capacities and skills in the network, and where, you know, for example, where the foundation could do some capacity building support. So this was a really fun one. I liked mapping it out this way, with these little color schemes.
Katie, that's about 12 minutes. We've got
Thanks.
a lot of buffer here, but
Yeah. I mean, I can also just share a little bit more in this attributes map. You know, I'll share a profile, because again, that, you know, the hope was that we could have people find each other, so you could filter and then kind of search through the profiles of people, you know, in the map. So I'll just share. This is a colleague at the Water Foundation who's fine with me sharing this. So you can see again the sumApp categories. You know, we filtered many of them to include in the profiles, but not all of them. And then so there's individual information and you know, watersheds, priority issues of concerns, and the collaboratives that those people are involved with. So that's that. And yeah, so I think that's kind of it in terms of a general overview of the map and how we've been using it. So I think I'll just shift if there are any questions, or if there's an area or aspect you'd like me to dive deeper into, I'd be happy to do that too.
how are we going to pop these questions? Because we can't see everybody.
Well, I'll just say too, on the back end, I'll just talk a little bit for a minute about my experience, because this was the first network map that I created using Kumu and sumApp. And it was a lot of fun and you know, a steep learning curve in some ways. I've used Kumu a lot for systems mapping, not network mapping. And I thought sumApp was really great to, you know, for this kind of application. It was just perfect. I really feel good about having used it. And what also just feels so instrumental, I mentioned Sarah's help at the beginning, and it was really helpful for me to kind of, you know, talk with her and folks who've used this and had some more experience. And then I also had a couple of hours of technical support from Christine Capra and also from Kumu. And that was super helpful. So that, you know, I'd really recommend that, you know, if you can get a couple of, if it's new to you and you're just kind of finding your way into it, that just a little bit of support can go a really long way.
It's great. Why don't, Katie, why don't you stop sharing, but then share anytime a question requires that. And then
Sure. Yeah, and I am seeing a couple questions in the map. So one is, how long was initial planning and implementation process? So I'll say that the whole process from conception to having the convening was 6 months. So it's pretty short, but quite intensive. And I do think that having it be more participatory was really great. I don't live in LA, I live in Northern California. And so, you know, having people on the ground who were deeply immersed in some of the issues there was really helpful. And also those stakeholder interviews. And again, the stakeholder interviews really helped to shape, you know, what it was we were mapping. but also the language, you know, and specifically around the water issues and the cross-cutting issues. There's a lot there. And there's a lot of nuances, right? Like, for example, when we were mapping ethnic identification or racial identification, you know, we had Latinx and Hispanic, and, you know, it became really clear through, you know, it being more of a collaborative process, we needed to include Chicano in that definition. And so, you know, that's just one example. And there are lots of those, of subtleties in the language and in the breadth and depth of what we're mapping.
You know, Seth was asking whether we post the questions in the chat or just go verbal. I think we're small enough that we can come off mic, and let's just loosen it up.
And there's another question too about if we were tracking usage, and is usage growing? So that it has grown a little bit since then, but not very much. And I think that's really the direct result of this not, you know, so again, so one aspect that we're really sitting with right now is that the map was really created, you know, to serve this kind of one particular process, and also to have it be available. But there wasn't a plan at the outset for how the map would be held in a role, or in the network, or in the field more long term. And so the project ended a while ago, but I'm still really interested in working with the foundation and the field to look at where this map best lives. And there were a couple of people who were really interested in the map and doing some more analysis with it. A professor at UCLA and a professor at another academic institution. And so it's really a live question right now. And you know, in the time after this, the half hour, I'd love to just do some brainstorming together with you all around that. But also, you know, the foundation did receive funding to initiate a collaborative network. And so they're moving into that. And, you know, I'm sitting with a sense that this map and these kind of maps are so powerful, and that we're only just scratching the surface. And I think, you know, we can just be so creative about how we use these maps and connect them to change in the real world. And so I think it'd be really fun to talk more about that.
Katie, can I ask a question directly?
Yeah, please.
So first of all, thank you. This is really a terrific map, and it's really nicely done. It looks like it's very intuitive to use and clear. I'm wondering if you could elaborate about the process of inclusion, and in terms of how you invited. You must have had an original invitation list of people. Some of them accepted the invitation to create a profile, some didn't, obviously. And then I imagine that with those who did, they probably identified additional people that you might then include. And then people who responded to the sumApp invitation originally might need to go back to see the new people. And it's just that, you know, that iterative process. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So what we did was, the foundation has a really great network in the county. It's been doing work there for a long time. And it's also, the project came on the heels of a really powerful multi-stakeholder effort in the county to pass a Measure W, which really, you know, generates a lot of money for stormwater management, specifically focused on low-income communities. So it was like the first time that, you know, housing advocates and labor advocates and, you know, equity leaders came together with environmental advocates and others. So that effort generated a network that we really built on. But it really was this iterative effort. So we did about a month-long period of intensive outreach, and you know, really grew the network, and then went back 2 or 3 times to everyone on the list and encouraged them to update their connections.
And so on the first map, you have the primary map that has the colored dots, which are the ones with profiles, and the non-colored dots, which don't have profiles. Are those non-colored dots people who were invited to have a profile and declined, or are they people who were identified by respondents, or is that the same list?
No, they were the former. So they some of them have some information, you know, there were a few categories I used to color those. So some of them, again, have filled out part of it, but many of them are on the map by virtue of being connected to somebody who indicated them as a collaborator. So there's actually a few people on the map who ranked highest in terms of in degree, you know, in terms of their connectivity in the system, but who
They have no profile.
Yeah. And that was really interesting to see. So I actually did really kind of felt around with the social network analysis tools in Kumu. And that was really helpful and interesting. And we also used that in the convening to, and shared that, here our highest people ranking is bridges in the system and people, having.
So I'll yield my time in a moment, but so of the folks that are in the map with the non-colored dots,
Yeah.
They were all invited to be able to have a profile.
Yeah.
And didn't.
That's right.
And many of them were just identified by other people, respondents who said, "Oh, I know that person."
That's right.
But basically, you kind of like turned it around so that everyone that was identified as a target contact was also invited into be a profile.
Yeah. And I feel like that was also, I ended up taking off everybody on the map who was invited but didn't respond and didn't receive any incoming connections. And I gave, lots of heads up about that, and eventually did remove everybody and then invited people to, update their connections after that, because there were a lot of people, right, on this map and a lot of connections for people to sort through. And so I felt like that also, that fact made those connections less robust in terms of sense making, because it may be that people didn't get through the whole list or whatnot. But I did, when I asked people to indicate their connections, I really encouraged them to also think of people they work closely with and search for those people.
We've got questions in the chat. Let me just ask them really quickly. So is it a public map?
It's actually a private map, but we're just in the process now of transferring it over. So it may be visible publicly, today.
That's so cool. I just know people in the LA area, in the Ventura County watershed that I'd love to share the map with. So
great.
Katy, did you do any, I think you published a blog piece or an article somewhere about it. Do you have any publication that aren't the actual map that you could share about the map?
Yeah, I do. I'll go ahead and find that and put it in the chat, but we did a blog on it at the Water Foundation. And
I'll add the link to my follow-up email as well.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie asked whether or not the skills offered and asks if that actually resulted in people getting together around that.
Yeah, so again, that was something that, we really encourage people to take initiative on. And I also did some interpretation and talked with the foundation about areas that I thought were strong and areas where, it felt like there could be some good capacity building work done. But that's one of the views, one of the areas I think there could be a lot more done with than we currently have.
David was asking about more clarity around when you mentioned the periphery, how the periphery was defined.
So again, in the periphery, there are people who have profiles and who indicated their connections, as well as ones who didn't. But I don't have a lot to say in terms of sense making or interpretation of that periphery. I think, the structure of the map looks like, it's got a strong core, it's got, periphery. I think that makes sense given what we know about the field. But was there another question about that periphery in particular?
David, did you want to elaborate? We're coming up on.
You're muted, David. You're muted.
Now you're muted.
we're encouraged to look at the periphery and actually get those voices heard.
Yeah, right.
And that was really the basis of the question.
Okay. Yeah. So David's referring to in network theory, the idea that the periphery is where innovation is happening, or different thinking, that people in the core who are all talking to each other a lot, have developed more of a like-mindedness. And so for me, that was most powerful in the map of the different collaboratives that are happening in LA, and this idea that you have a core group of leaders who are going around and participating in all of these different collaboratives and bringing their voices forward. But in fact, there are a number of people around the periphery who are maybe involved in one of those collaboratives, but not. So it led to some great thinking in the group about power and voice, and how do we increase the diversity of voices in these other existing collaboratives.
Just looking at time, we're at time to switch into this other section about questions that people brought to the on-ramp. So again, we've got, Katy's said she'd hang around for a half hour afterwards, and we can pitch our other questions to her.
Nice.
So Christine, do you want to
Sure. So one of the So one of the things we try to do with these on-ramp sessions is, if people have a question that they just have to get answered, we like to make sure that we do at least touch on that question, so that everybody feels at least satisfied that they got something that they wanted out of it. And so we asked you a question in the registration form of what is a burning, or we had a field asking you what was a burning question you have. And and then we look at who's actually showing up, so that we're only answering the ones for those who show up. And there are 3, and I'm going to take the one that's, I think, easiest to answer first, and then go into the other 2, and we'll have a discussion with them. So the first one is from Jim Lang: how to decide when and how to actually deploy an organizational versus an individual level actor network. Can you mix them? If so, who answers for the organization? It's not really a simple question, but it's not a great big discussion question at the moment either. And one of the reasons for that is sumApp is currently in the middle of finalizing our next big feature, which will be to be able to link up an organizational project with an individual project. So you can have 2 separate projects: org project, person project, relationships, person-to-person relationships, org-to-org relationships, and then you can, if you choose to do so, you can link them, and then also have person-to-org questions that you ask people. So you can now mix them, which makes that question in some ways a little bit easier, for that decision. The part about who answers for the organization actually needs to be an inter-organizational. I mean, somebody's got to decide who at each organization should be the responder, because what we're not going to do, sumApp isn't designed to do this, have everybody at the organization try it and then try to sort of compile all the answers. I've known people do that, but that's a lot of data gathering. So there will be one, you have to define one person, and then they'll respond for the organization. And sumApp will make it easy for them to know, okay, here I'm responding as myself, as a person, talking about my personal relationships. Here I'm responding as a representative of this organization. So we've kind of figured all that out, how that should work. Jim, is there any piece of that I haven't answered that I should go into more about? Is he still here?
I am. Yes, I am. Thank you for taking the question.
Not Jim, David, sorry.
Just to clarify, it sounded like you said this was a feature that was going to happen, or is it currently something that I can explore doing now?
It's not there yet, but we're on the home stretch of development. So
excellent.
So within the next month or 2 at the very most.
Oh, great. Okay.
And so what you could do in the meantime, though, is you could start an organization. You could start either of those 2. It's in sumApp, it's set up, and it's in tier 4. sumApp, it's set up as 2 separate separate projects. So you could start both of those projects and then combine them once the feature is out. If you want to get rolling on one, you could start with one and then add the other later, or start with them both and then combine them later too. So you don't have to wait to get started.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next two, one is a very general and I think full discussion question from Jill Van Horn, which is getting started, but also mapping connections in an ever-changing landscape. Things move so fast. So I'm gonna hold that, put a pin in that one just for a second and say, the other question is from Philip Topham, which is, I'm trying to understand Orange County's entrepreneurial system and why everyone is offering the same services, but not really helping the entrepreneur. So I'm feeling like those are, one is specific to a situation and one is a general one. And let's start with the general one and you guys chime in, and then, but let's hold a couple minutes for Philip's entrepreneurial system question. Does that work? So let's talk first about getting started, but also about mapping in an ever-changing landscape. And a number of you have experience with this, so I'm going to just invite you to chime in. Katie, maybe? Do you want to start?
I don't actually. I was answering a couple questions on the chat, so I'm not right there with you. Sorry.
Okay. Sarah, do you want to answer?
Yeah, could you reiterate the question again? I don't know if I quite fully understood it.
Okay, so the question is it's about just getting started and also mapping connections in an ever-changing landscape. So how do we get started and how do we deal with the fact that things keep changing?
Yeah, so, I think the best thing that we did in terms of our mapping work was to really start small. Like, we found a handful of folks in the network that were really interested and jazzed up about this, and so together we were able to, test a lot of things out.